Hi, everyone. Oh, I'm so excited that you're here with us. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Lisa Brazelton here with my co-host, Chris Noble. Hi, Chris.
Hey Lisa, how you doing today?
I'm great. I'm great. Welcome, everyone, to Wisdom from the Edge podcast, where we push the envelope in every direction that we possibly can. Um, and today we are going to talk about telomeres, the telomere effect. Um, it's something that has been talked about probably really heavily for the last maybe 3 or 4 years. And I'm going to be reading a few things from the excerpt from the book called Telomere Effect by Elizabeth Blackburn and Elisa Eppel, both PhD. And this book is phenomenal, Chris. I mean, talking about how do we essentially, what are the things that we can do to elongate our life? Because these things called the telomeres are part of our DNA, and it's the cells within that are, we have a predisposition to having those shortened, or we can elongate that, and therefore our cells then continue to regenerate and we're able to live longer. What's really interesting about this particular subject is that there is a spike that happens that science has discovered, that people between the age of 45 and 60, there's this 15 or 18-year spike in respiratory disease, heart disease, cancer, heart failure, just all of these different diseases literally go from a baseline of almost like less than 10%, and then it shoots up to about 60, 70% within this time frame of our lives. And so I know scientists and geneticists have been really studying, well, why is that? What is happening to the body? And we're not only going to talk about it, we're going to get a little science geeky on you guys. So bear with us. But at the very end, we're going to talk about what are some of the ways in which we can elongate our telomeres so that we last longer here on this wonderful earth, this Mother Earth. So let's dive in.
Let's do it. It's exciting.
Okay, telomeres. What are telomeres? So, telomeres are at the tip of our chromosomes. So, the DNA of every chromosome has end regions consisting of DNA strands coated by a dedicated protective sheath of protein. And telomeres actually look like a shoelace. If you take a shoelace, at the very end of that shoelace is that plastic cap. Now, what the science has discovered is that over time, like that plastic cap, if you will, that are called aglets, those actually start to disintegrate. And then what happens to the shoelaces, right? The ends of the shoelaces get frayed. And that's exactly what's happening to our human body. And that is the reason that we age. So telomeres, which are spelled Telomeres, pronounced telomeres. So they repeat segments of non-coding DNA that live at the end of our chromosomes, like I said. Telomeres, which shorten with each cell division, help determine how fast your cells age and when they die, depending on how quickly they wear down. And there's been an extraordinary discovery from these particular two women's research lab that talk about how the ends of these chromosomes can actually lengthen, and as a result, The aging is a dynamic process that can be accelerated or slowed down. And in some aspects, they can actually be reversed. So to me, this is so fascinating, right, Chris? I mean, for us to know right now that we have the ability to understand how to physiologically change our lifespan is really cool.
It reminds me of things I've heard about how age is, in a sense, still a concept that if we believe in it, then that's why we expire from 80 to 100 years, roughly. And if you don't believe in that and you have a different literal mindset around age, that mindset will extend your age. And the physical thing that seems to happen with that is the telomere caps. But in a way, almost the source of the telomere caps shifting and changing is still the mind, perhaps, still the perception, right, that we have that maybe
Ah,
that's just an opinion. That's just an idea I always have. But like, are the telomere caps maybe the physical, thing that then transpires? But the original thing was the mentality of like, oh, I can live to 1,000 years old, no problem. I'm just throwing some
that's
ideas.
such a great question. No, that's a great question because I'm going to read something that's really going to talk right about that right now. So
Great.
telomeres, um, they don't simply carry out the command issued by our genetic code. Telomeres, as it turns out, are listening to you. They absorb the instructions you give them. The way you can live, in effect, tell your telomeres to speed up the process of aging and also can be to slow down. And from what? From everything from the foods that we eat to the way we respond to emotional challenges, to the level of stress we have on a daily basis in our lives, to the amount of exercise or not that we have in our lives. So, what we were exposed to as children when we were younger, all of these different things actually do affect. Um, and Chris and I are huge believers in how we think and how we feel are also going to be a direct response of how the telomeres are going to grow or to shorten, okay, quicker. So when cells are tired, they reach a stage called senescence. And they are still alive, but they've stopped dividing permanently. And this is called the Hayflick limit. Hayflick limit. It's a natural limit that human cells have for dividing. And there's like a stop switch on these cells that happens to be telomeres that have become critically short. Throughout our bodies, we find that cells that renew, including our immune cells or our bone cells, our liver cells, our skin cells, lots of different cells, our cardiovascular cells, they need to divide over and over to keep our bodies healthy. And renewing our cells includes some types of normal cells that divide, like our immune cells and um, our immune cells, which are really, really important, obviously, to keep us alive, but which keep dividing even longer. And those critical cells in our body have what we call stem cells, which can divide indefinitely as long as we are healthy. And unlike those cells that are the Hayflick cells, which are the ones that die and they don't reproduce, they have telomeres. So stem cells, if you keep those cells healthy, they have enough telomeres to enable them to keep dividing throughout your entire lifespan. So what does it look like when we have healthy telomeres? Our skin is glowing, right? We have a lot of moisture within our skin. As an example, we can breathe very easily. We're able to take in deep breaths and outward. We have vitality. And so these are some of the ways in which we can look, act, and feel younger, which is a great indicator that our telomeres are healthy and they're growing. So, sentient cells, which are the cells that reach the stage where cells no longer divide and reproduce, they can leak a pro-inflammatory substance that make you vulnerable to pain and chronic illness. Eventually, many sentient cells will undergo a prolonged death. And this is where disease happens. So many healthy human cells can divide repeatedly so long as their telomeres remain functional. So I know this is a lot of information, viewer, and if you like what you're hearing, give us a thumbs up here. But this is pretty amazing, right, Chris? I mean, to understand the complexity of our body intelligence and all that we're learning at such a quantum, I mean, it's beyond actually quantum of our learning curve. We have sped up our understanding that I think our body intelligence is so vastly more even overly complicated than we can even understand. And but what I love is that science is now progressing on a daily basis, the discoveries that are happening. But I find stuff like this to be so important just to hear so that I can choose to make changes in my mental emotional body so that I know that I'm feeding my body the or keeping my cells from going into atrophy and actually dying, right?
Yeah, I'm also hearing like, our body really truly responds to us. Like everything that we're thinking subconsciously and consciously plays a major role in the expiration date on our cells and certainly everything going on the subatomic level, which of course affects everything because it's all made of that. And I keep when you were talking, I kept getting this imagery. It's kind of, I don't know if this will be a little out there, but I kind of got this sort of comparison of, when you're riding a horse, the more you connect on a deeper level with that horse, it's not like a car that, is more mechanical and just purely responds to like basic commands and physical inputs and whatnot. A horse, there's like a deeper spiritual and conscious connection you need to have with this animal in order to really be in synchronicity and to be, really riding in tandem. The best way to ride a horse is to continually deepen your bond and connection with that animal. And it almost sounds like, in a weird way, how our body is similar, where the further we deepen our connection to ourself and to our physical body, the more control we have over it, and the more we're able to manipulate it into whatever we want, whether that's living for longer or just for keeping out of disease, dis-ease, and sickness and things like that. Like our minds and the command that we have over our own body is fundamentally hugely important and clearly has a very physiological effect on everything. That's kind of what I'm hearing. So I don't know why I get this comparison of like, connecting with yourself as if you are connecting with this other conscious entity, like a horse.
No, I love it. I love the analogy of being one with the horse because it's a physical being. It is a physical Mother Earth's child that we can connect to on a deeper level, as with all of her animals. And when we are, riding in tandem with a horse, there is a connection that we become one with it. And I suppose that if you want to say it's a horse, you could also talk about a dog or, a pet where you're really connected. And you're connected in a way that you don't have to say anything in order for that communication to happen. And I think so much of, but the intention is there, right? The intention
and
and your place in you. Yes.
and the animal can sense the other things going on. So if you're approaching and you're in a fear state and very agitated and anxious, that's the energy that will be then reciprocated back to you. So you're going to get a more anxious horse or dog or whatever animal. And so it's the same with our body. If we continually feed it stress and anxiety, that's what it's going to replicate and produce more of. It's going to hinder the telomere caps. It's going to shorten our lifespan. So once again, it comes all the way back to like our thoughts and our emotions and what's going on internally.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well said. I mean, at the end of the day, why do people age differently? And, one of the reasons is because of cell aging. And cell ages, we could ask ourselves, well, what causes the cells to age before it's time?
Yeah.
And this is it. This is the discovery. It's understanding that we have the ability to alter through our thoughts, our feelings, our conditions, what we choose to eat, how we choose to feel, our sleep, our
Every
environment.
the water that we drink. I just was actually producing another podcast that was talking about water. And I was talking about the consciousness of water, but also these places called blue zones all over the planet where the water is so pure and so clean and has yet to be basically interfered with by humanity. And on all these blue zones around the world where the water is the most pure and most clean, it just so happens that the average life expectancy and age is the highest, is the longest out of any other places in the world. So it's connected because then, of course, the water not only is clean to drink and bathe and all that cooking, but it affects all the plant life and the animal life and everything else you're eating and consuming and living in, right? So it makes sense that your environment, the things that you eat, all these things play a major, major role. Like everything you've been saying, essentially, it all
Absolutely.
contributes.
Well, because we're made up of 98% water. And Dr. Emoto, basically back in the 2000s, I think I'm not sure, he's no longer on this living
I
earth, I
think
don't
it's
think
past. Yeah.
anymore. But his work on water molecules is just fascinating, that we have to be so mindful of what it is that we're thinking, because his study basically showed water molecules when it was being exposed to negativity, whether they were words, whether it was music like heavy metal, or toxins that were in the water. And these water crystals would literally look decayed. And then on the opposite, when water crystals were measured and taken microscopically from when they were in meditation, or there was words of love, or there was like music of Beethoven or Mozart, those look like beautiful snowflakes. Really, they were intricate, they were absolutely fascinating. You can look and study the work of Dr. Emoto and water crystals. I'm sure you can find many things on YouTube right now. The other thing that's really interesting, talking about water and what we do with our bodies, is that there has been, probably over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of study between fluoride and the calcification of our pineal gland. And our pineal gland, which literally sits right behind our third eye, right in the middle of our two hemispheres, looks like a little walnut. And when that gets calcified, and one of the quickest ways to calcify the pineal gland is the seat of our consciousness. And when that gets calcified, we lose our consciousness. Well, there is a huge correlation right now between Alzheimer's and the calcification of our pineal gland. And now there's a tremendous amount of research that's going in to understand, you know, I mean, to understand how to. I don't know if they have a reversal of the decalcification, but it certainly is the quickest way for us. I mean, I haven't brushed my teeth with fluoride in the longest time because I knew something was going on with that fluoride when I was younger. I'm like, no, it's not happening. I'm not doing that. Um, but I'm so happy that that information is getting out there. So viewer, look that up, that fascinates you. There's so many people that a lot of older people are getting um, diagnosed with dementia and with Alzheimer's, and it's a horrific way. to end life here on Earth. But it is because the mind, this consciousness is literally clogged. Um,
I mean, I'll just quickly add a little
anyway,
bit to that, Lisa, because
yes.
there are some actionable things people can take a right way just today that can start decalcifying your pineal gland. The biggest thing, of course, is to completely reshift what your water consumption is and how you're filtering your tap water. Basically, just try to stop drinking tap water altogether and move into different forms of filtration. There's like alkaline based filtration systems, plenty of things you can look up online that help filter out fluoride. And there's also these shungite rocks you can buy. They come from a lake in Russia where it's like the only lake in the world that's still purely clean to drink out of normally. And part of that process is apparently because of these rocks have a purifying quality and they can kill these microbes like fluoride. So I put those in the bottom of my water filter after the alkaline filter has done what it does, and then the rocks filter out the rest of the fluoride. I found that pretty helpful. Of course, if you're able to get natural spring water, and you can actually go on a lot of websites local to your area. At least in Canada, it's quite common that you can find local springs that are clean to drink. That's the best. If you can get something that's coming purely from Mother Earth, I mean, she's got the best filtration system out there, and that water is supercharged in many different ways, physically, but also spiritually, energetically. You're going to be tasting water tastes so different once you start to go down this world, and it's delicious. It's amazing. You can feel the life. You realize that when water goes through a huge plumbing system, it's like beaten up and just like in a complete state of chaos and disarray once it comes out of the tap. And so even just letting water stay, just let it settle for like an hour or two, giving it emotion and thought and love, like how people sing to their plants, that's also really helpful. You can even write affirmations and uh, point the letters towards the water. You can just tape it onto your water filter. My previous partner used to do that all the time with her water, and it was a great system. So you're giving constant affirmations to the water. Lisa talked about Dr. Emoto's work that's proven that that's things. So there's so many things that we can do. The last thing is there's a company that develops a filter called Cognon Water, and I've heard a lot about that. I have a couple friends who are like now fully on board with that the last couple of years, and they have the amount of disease and physical and even emotional ailments that they've had that have now been completely eradicated just because they changed their water consumption. It's endless. So getting into water and how you want to purify and filter that water is going to be a massive game changer, I can imagine.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for bringing all that to our attention. Zero Water is a fantastic water filter system. It's really inexpensive. The only thing that I would add to that, Chris, is that most water systems, if they're external and they're not part of your sink under your sink, which is the best really to have like the best alkaline, you can change the dial and things like that. But if you're having anything that's in plastic, make sure that you move it to a glass. When you put shungite in your water, do not use plastic. Always use glass, clear glass, and that will be that really purifies the water. There's something about shungite and plastic, which is another reason why just plastic in and of itself. Think about how long water is sitting in plastic; it can't move. No doubt that there are particles of plastic that are going in all these plastic bottles that people drink. Not only is it polluting our Mother Earth, but it is not good for you. So anything that you can do, viewer, to change that habit alone, you will start feeling a completely different set of physical, physiological, probably emotional and mental clarity just from doing that alone.
Yeah. It's just as simple as those water jugs that you normally see at the water cooler that are the big plastic ones. You just go and get the glass version of that. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's get back to the telomeres for a
Yeah.
second. And so we were talking about why do cells age before it's time? And let me go back to those protective plastic tips that are at the end of shoelaces called aglets. And aglets are there to keep the shoelaces from fraying. But if we can imagine that your shoelaces are the chromosomes, the structure inside the cells that carry your gene information, telomeres are so important to make sure that they are cared for in the most loving, benevolent way. Telomeres, which can be measured in units of DNA, known as base pairs, are like the aglets of shoelace. They form little caps at the end of the chromosomes and they keep the genetic material from unraveling. They are the aglets of aging, but telomeres tend to shorten over time. So a newborn baby has about 10,000 base pairs of telomeres. And by the time we're 65 years old, we have about 4,800 pairs, base pairs of telomeres. When your shoelace tips wear down too far, the shoelaces become unusable. You may throw them away. Something happens similar to cells. So when telomeres become too short, the cells stop dividing altogether. Telomeres aren't the only reason that cells can become senescent. There are other things like stress on normal cells that we don't understand very well, but shortened telomeres are one of the primary reasons that human cells grow old. So I would like to stop here and just talk about some of the things that they suggested in the book and some of the things we've talked about over and over again here on this channel. But what are some of the things that you can start doing and you can stop doing immediately that will actually have you elongate your life, and so that your cells don't stop aging or stop producing or regenerating too quickly? And so some of it is how do you respond to a difficult situation? Do you respond or do you react? And when we respond, we are responding based on the ability to be coherent enough to hear before we speak or act or feel. And when we react, we don't have control over that. So if there is a normal feeling of being threatened on a regular basis, you are actually shortening your telomeres. When we have mind-body techniques, such as meditation, breath work, maybe Qigong or other martial arts. Sorry, that was like, it was right there. And then
I
I
was
couldn't
thinking of,
say it for the longest
yeah,
time. I'm
like
like,
Tai
what is it?
Chi,
Yes, Tai Chi.
yeah.
Those are great for reducing stress. And so here's what's so cool about that. That actually increases your telomeres, or it increases the telomerase, which is the chemical that is associated with telomeres. And it's the enzyme that actually replenishes the telomeres. Exercise that promotes cardiovascular fitness. And here's some of the things that telomeres will hate is processed foods. Processed foods are like the worst thing for you. But whole healthy foods, they will elongate and stay. These telomeres love health in all ways, shape, or form. Neighborhoods that are in low socio cohesion, meaning that if people don't trust one another, they tend to, they've been doing studies. I literally just, this is like the very first chapter of this book. There's so many things that we can think of. Are you an optimist or are you a pessimist? Do you live life thinking that everything is about half full? How do you respond to people that you care about? Are you hostile? Are you empathetic? Are you conscientious? Do you feel like you have a purpose? Chris, what's some of the, how about ruminating thoughts? Now, there you go. How many times do we are in a place where we're like, we cannot stop thinking about a conversation that we had with our partner that made us so angry, or our child, or our boss, or whatever? How is it that we can put the pause button on and redirect, even if it means doing something completely different, like going and getting a cookie, because you cannot continue to be in those ruminations. That is going to literally shorten your life.
Yeah, those are like those negative thought loops that are so easy to get into. For me, I find physicality helps get me out of them. And things like just getting into a yoga flow, even if it's just maybe doing a 5 minute stretch or doing a full blown workout, going for a walk, going for a run, getting into nature. Nature, as we said in many episodes, like a magic bullet. It just works so immediately and so deeply. But those are the physical, I find, especially when you're in those thought loops, it's not always the easiest to just conceptually be like, okay, letting it go. It's like I need to physically maybe just do something that's going to preoccupy my brain just to try to help get those thought loops out of there, because we know if you just continue to ruminate on this, yeah, you're just killing your telomere caps, and you're shortening your lifespan. So there's lots of wonderful tools to get out of those loops.
Chris, you brought something up that I think is really beautiful, and that is to put little notes, put a note around your water and have it face your water. That's such a unique thing. Um, I will actually start doing that. I've never done that before. I've put a lot of crystals in my water glass, but I've never done it. I talk to plants all the time. That may be something that you want to do. And then, listener, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you took a break?
What's
When
a
was the
break?
last time? Yeah, what is that? When was the last time you did something for yourself? Maybe you decided to play hooky for a day, and it wasn't playing hooky so you can go play golf, or playing hooky so you can take your child, or, to go do something, but actually just spent time alone, maybe by the lake. Maybe you live close to the ocean. Maybe it's to go for a walk in the woods. Maybe go for a trail walk. Maybe it's just to sit in the sun and bask in the sun. A lot of people don't take breaks. And in the Western world, we think our vacation, we work so hard and then we go on vacation, but our vacation is filled with things to do. And it's the opposite of what a vacation really is meant to do, to be.
Yeah, it's it's something that's a little foreign to the Western world, to a lot of cultures around the world nowadays. The workaholicism and the laziness. God forbid you're lazy. You're a terrible person if you're lazy. And what's our definition of lazy? Well, it varies from person to person, right? And laziness typically is gets thrown over what is just necessary rest. We still demonize rest a lot of the time. Oh, you're just being lazy, being a couch potato. I'm like, well, look, I mean, it's one thing to maybe just be in a rut, or a place where, yeah, you really aren't moving forward, and that's a different kind of energy. We're just talking about here and there as much as you can, which we know is not that simple in this crazy busy day-to-day life. Just take a moment. I've been on tour this whole summer, performing and doing a lot of music, and it's just been busy, 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 crazy schedules, really challenging to find alone time, and really challenging to find recharge rest time. But I guard it with my life, and I schedule it in just as much as the performance themselves are scheduled in. Like I make sure I get my at least a half an hour nap slash yoga nidra session, many hours before the performance in the hotel room. I just black out the curtains and then just put on my headphones and snooze for about half an hour. I mean, I like to do a thing called yoga nidra, where you're not actually fully asleep, but you do a full body scan and you put your body to sleep, and you actually get into an even deeper form of rest. So if you're not a fan of napping, look into something like yoga nidra. You can type it into YouTube and just follow, or Spotify is where I like to listen to my yoga nidra guidance. and just follow one of those for 20 minutes, half an hour, and come out feeling very refreshed, rejuvenated. Just taking those moments, those are actually really helpful to do on flights when you're in travel. I find they help me with jet lag a lot. Just sneak in a quick little yoga nidra on the flight. Things like that. These are just tools that once you start to get into a habit, which has, believe me, audience, has taken me years to build as a habit. Uh, Recovering workaholic here. So yeah, it's there's lots that we can do, but I truly feel that one of the most important things I've come into in the last couple of years has been making rest equal priority to anything else that's business and money related, or deep important friendship, family commitments. It's the same level of importance for me as rest.
Thank you so much, Chris, for saying that and for sharing your stories with the audience. It is so easy for us to think that we are always having to do in order to have. And yet, I have learned myself as being a partly a workaholic, but the other part is that I want to do so many things that I just want to do it all. But we can't have the things that we would like to have if all we're doing is doing. We have to be. And the being state is not a doing state. The being state is being in stillness. Last week, I think I may have shared, um, Chris, I know you know this, that I was in such an elated state last week. I was feeling so happy, so grateful, so overjoyed. And I had plenty of things to do, but because I was in that state that was elevated over several days, opportunity came to me. And I have an opportunity to do something, to go somewhere. And I am so excited that that just literally landed in my lap. I didn't think about it. I didn't study it. I didn't try to manipulate it. All of a sudden, something magical showed up for me. And it's a trip that I've been wanting to take for a very, very long time. And so this is, viewer, what I think we are saying over and over again. Hopefully, we're saying it a little differently every time you hear us. But when you feel at all that you're pushing the river, that you're trying to make something happen, that is the time to step back and to go on pause, even if you have all of these other things that you have to do. Because when we're in a state that feels fulfilling, exciting, when we imbue enthusiasm in theos, we do much less than what we would normally do. And life starts to all of a sudden shift and change and open up and provide opportunity and manifest things that we want. Magic shows up. This is where magic shows up. So, and at the same time, based on the information, thanks to these two brilliant women in the telomere effect, is that we get to live longer. Now, that's a bonus to me. Not only do we feel great, we get to live longer. So, and not be in the path of dis-ease, but be in the path of just complete vitality. So, we hope that you really enjoyed today. If you like what you're hearing, please give us some comments, give us some thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. Chris, thank you so much always for your insight and your sharing. It's just such a blessing to be here with you. And audience, thank you so much for listening. You give us the fuel to continue doing what we're doing.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Wisdom from the Edge. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. And make sure, if you haven't already, to follow, like, and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate that. It actually helps us out quite a lot in growing this platform. And also leave us a comment if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts about what you enjoyed on this episode and things that you want to offer, maybe ideas for a new episode or things that you want to hear more about. Also, make sure to check out our website, wisdomfromtheedge.org. All that is in the description below. And you can learn more about what we do, what offerings we have, and of course, the courses and programs. There's lots to learn from, a lot of really cool resources to check out to enhance your everyday life. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Wisdom from the Edge.